Hey all, and welcome to another installment of Differently Wired, the YouTube channel dedicated to smashing stigma against and promoting acceptance of neurodivergent individuals in all their shapes, forms, and sizes. Welcome back, everyone. Now, as I said in my last video, I was moving, and I am officially done with that project. As you can probably tell from behind me, I'm all settled in and happy. I apologize for not getting this video out sooner, but the move was an ordeal. And combined with that, the fact that my internet service provider didn't get me service until, I'm recording this on September 8th. It probably comes out a lot later than that, until the Wednesday after that. So, yeah, it's been a bit of an ordeal, but we're there, we're happy, we got this, and we're ready to move on with the project, right? So, today I want to talk about something that happened to me recently. Now, if you recall from my first video, I mentioned that during the course of a project that I'm working on, I'll divulge more information about that in a later video, I was looking through my old school file and I noticed a notation that said attention deficit. Now, back in the 90s, under the run of the DSM-4, you couldn't be co-diagnosed with something like ADHD, or at the time ADD, and at the time Asperger's disorder. It had to be one or the other. So, but I never knew about that notation until then, and it really got me wondering about that side of myself. So, in addition to promoting the cause of neurodiversity and autism awareness and all that stuff, I've also been trying to learn more about attention deficit disorder and all that stuff. So this whole thing got me thinking, do I have both? Do I have attention deficit and Asperger's, or in modern terms, ADHD Inattentive and Autism Spectrum Disorder? I decided to start pursuing an opinion on that, just for my own sense of knowledge and well-being, and it turns out that I was indeed correct. Unlike how back in the 90s there was debate as to whether I had one or the other, well, not much debate. It was pretty much said that I had Asperger's, but there was dissent from one psychiatrist.
All favorite. All opposed? Nay.
Who keeps saying that?
It was him. Let's get him, fellas.
But unlike then, we now know that the two can be co-diagnosed, and it turns out that I was indeed correct all along. I do indeed have both. And honestly, this felt like turning the light switch on in a room that I didn't know needed illumination. It's learning about my place on the spectrum over the course of the last couple years, last 7 or so years of doing advocacy in various forms, has felt like finding my group and finding my identity and finding what it is that makes me a person and my culture, my neuroculture, if you will. But finding out that I'm also attention deficit has explained a lot about me too. It's been a breath of fresh air to me. And I'd like to share a little bit about why that is, my experiences with it, what it is, and a bit more today. This is going to be an informative video about all things co-diagnosis between Asperger's, Autism Spectrum Disorder, and attention deficit. So if y'all are ready for a yay science video?
Yes, science!
Here we go. Before we get started, you might be thinking to yourself, ADHD? Really? Isn't that the thing caused by too much screen time, or chemicals in the water, or not having the attention span that people used to and not being able to sit still? Isn't it just kind of a made-up diagnosis?
What do you think I'm going to say to you?
No.
Correct. Goodbye.
If you're going to be one of those people who seriously says that, this video series is not for you. So, just putting that out there. But no, it is 100% a real diagnosis. In fact, it has been known about for over 200 years and studied for over 200 years under various names, but is still one of the most misunderstood and misconceptualized and not fully grasped disorder in the DSM. It affects a lot of people, yet many people don't know what the heck it is. So, on that note, let's do a brief little overview of what ADHD actually is. ADHD stands for Attention Deficit Hyperactivity Disorder. And again, it's one of the most common childhood disorders. It used to be known as two distinct disorders: ADD, attention deficit disorder, and ADHD, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. As of the DSM-5, which is what we're now operating under, they've been amalgamated into one term, ADHD. Modern ADHD has three subtypes, though. There's inattentive, there's hyperactive, and there's combined. Now, inattentive, I suspect, is what they originally thought I had back in the day because it was mentioned purely as an attentional deficit in my file. Inattentive is difficulty paying attention, difficulty with attention span, difficulty focusing on committing to tasks and following through and completion, that kind of thing. Hyperactivity, the hyperactive subtype, involves fidgetiness, restlessness, a feeling of an internal motor that's always going, that kind of thing, and the need to move around. There's more to it than that, but in a nutshell, the combined type, which is actually the most common type, is, of course, combining both. Someone can have more elements of inattentive, more elements of hyperactive, but it combines the two. Reflecting on myself, I think I have the combined type, although I'm going to ask my psychiatrist about that next time I see her. I think I have that one because I do experience some hyperactivity at times, like bursts, but I also am the inattentive, the attention span differences are what impact me the most. So the thing is that you might be thinking, okay, but how does this relate to autism spectrum disorder? Autism spectrum disorder and ADHD are very commonly found together. In fact, autism spectrum disorders often coincide or co-occur with other kinds of conditions. Common ones include LD, like learning delay, OCD, obsessive compulsive disorder, and yes, ADHD, among many others. There are comorbidity, which means co-occurrence of more than one disorder together, is a very common, very, very common thing. Like, epilepsy is another one, although that is for another entire other video, but autism typically doesn't occur in a vacuum. There are usually other things that go with it. And ADHD happens to be the most common, one of the most common anyway. In fact, in a study of children aged 2 to 17, the American Center for Disease Control and Prevention determined that 9.5% of them had some form of ADHD, and 14% of kids with ASD also had ADHD. So 14% of autistic children also were ADHD-ers. That's a huge number considering the size of most human populations. I mean, these things vary from study to study, like the exact numbers can vary, but there's a pretty clear link in all the scientific literature between ADHD and ASD. In fact, the whole reason why, under the DSM-4, the prior Diagnostic and Statistical Manual in the 90s, under which I was diagnosed with Asperger's, the whole reason why back then there was a debate was because in the 90s, under the DSM-4, there was so much overlap between the two disorders, between their characteristics, the areas of functioning that they impact, the kind of... Losing your train of thought is a very common ADHD thing. I think I might even just leave this in the video. The way the two disorders impact a person, the kind of variation of brain wiring they cause, are so similar that many thought that one canceled out the other. So if you'd go with whichever diagnostic label was a better fit for your patient, instead of saying you have both because, well, it seemed redundant. At least that was the intent of the writers of the DSM-4. In clinical practice, a lot of therapists found, well, no, the two are different, we should be co-diagnosing them. And that led to the DSM-5 recognizing the ability of the two to be co-diagnosed at all. And that's why now I'm able to have a diagnosis of ADHD and of autism spectrum disorder, which is one of those things I'm super grateful to the DSM-5 about, because it allowed me to know myself better. Now, I mean, now that we know a little bit more about ADHD and autism comorbidity, why are they so similar? What is it about their traits, their characteristics, that led clinicians to think you could only have one or the other because they're too similar to co-diagnose. Well, so keep in mind when I say this that these similarities are surface level similarities in some cases, and in fact, the two disorders are different. They're related, yes, but they're different. For one, ADHD and autism both impact executive functioning abilities. Executive functioning can be anything from remembering you have an appointment, to cleaning up after yourself in your apartment, to being aware of commitments and things to do and being able to follow through on tasks, all of these things. In fact, a common thing between people with ADHD and people on the spectrum is difficulty doing something you're not interested in. Going off of the special interests video I did a couple weeks ago, or about a month ago now, if those of us on the spectrum and those of us with ADHD are into something, we can hyper-focus in on it. And I can't go to bed many times unless a project I've sunken into has been completed to a satisfactory degree. It bothers me. This is a thing. As well, both kids and adults and anyone with ADHD and with autism both also struggle with social situations. The difference being people on the spectrum struggle because they oftentimes have a hard time reading people. They lack the instinctive ability to process a social situation the same way that a neurotypical person would. They have their own method of processing social situations. I did a whole video on that. Please check that out if you want to know more. But basically, communication differences and struggles. And people with ADHDers have similar struggles for different reasons. A lot of times, speaking from my own experience, it's as someone who has both, it's as much a not always understanding the social situation thing, which is the autism side of it, but the ADHD side of it is, I want to jump in and complete a thought now, I want to butt in.
Oh, pick me, pick me.
You know, not always knowing when to jump into a conversation and when not to. I feel an impulsive need sometimes to just say what I'm thinking. And that's one of the reasons why kids and adults with ADHD have difficulty with social stuff. Also, when it comes to relationships, there are challenges that come up there as well. And I mean, that would require an entire video in and of itself. But suffice to say that there are enough similarities between the two that even now there is debate as to why exactly they're co-related, because a lot of kids and adults who are autistic also are ADHDers. And the theories abound, but basically they seem to impact similar parts of the brain, and they seem to co-occur with enough regularity that some people even think that ADHD is part of the autism spectrum, but other people don't. There's a lot of debate there, and I'm not going to get into that in this video, but suffice to say, comorbidity between the two is a thing, and the reason why it wasn't always a thing is because of how similar in some ways they both are. Now, that being said, again, how does this make me feel as someone who just received a diagnosis, of something that I've lived with my entire life, but wasn't always aware of? I mean, honestly, I kind of feel relieved more than anything. The same feeling that I felt when I first started learning about neurodiversity and my own place on the spectrum and all that stuff happened again when I learned about even just the unofficial ADHD diagnosis that I'd gotten in the 90s back in 2015 when I was reading my school file. I felt a sense of, well, that explains it. Well, oh my god, that's me. It fits like a glove. It felt like... And getting the official diagnosis just furthered that along and made me feel even better about myself in a way. I felt like I'd finally found the instruction manual for my brain. Like, up until now, the first 50 to 100 pages of my instruction manual for my brain, the part dealing with ASD, made perfect sense. Okay, yes, in cases of this, do this. In case of... But then you'd get to, like, halfway through, and pages were either ripped out or written in Klingon. And I might be a Trekkie, but I don't understand written Klingon. I know a few words. I know Kapla, I know Petak, and I know Kronos as the name of the planet. But yeah, that's basically it. It felt like it was written in Klingon. And here I am thinking, oh, well, am I just terrible for not being able to understand this? Like, what's wrong with me? And then learning about this, it just made perfect sense. It's like, oh, that's why I'm like that. That's why I have this difficulty, but also this strength. You know, it felt like someone had finally shipped me the correct manual for my brain, along with an apology letter that they hadn't gone into me sooner. How's that for customer service, right? So the psychiatrist I went to see confirmed for me that a lot, something which I've always said, which led to me starting this entire video series, because she was very neurodiversity friendly, and I really enjoyed that. I was very happy to see that, because, you know, you're always wary when you go into these things of like, what are they going to think of me, that kind of thing. But no, she was very pro neurodiversity and very warm, and she said what I've always said, that things like ASD and ADHD make us who we are. They are intrinsically linked to how we are. They are part of us. They're responsible for our struggles, yes, but also our triumphs and our strengths. And the fact is that I wouldn't be doing the things I'm doing and able to do to see the world the way I see it were it not for being a spectrum dweller and an ADHD-er. And I'm really grateful for that. Again, that's why it felt like a relief. It explained why I had certain challenges, but it also refocused my life and being certain that I'm following the right path by doing things my way, because that's what I need to do for my brain. Yes, I'm stubborn about wanting to do things the way I want to do them, but in many cases it's because I know how my brain works, even if I didn't have an official diagnostic label. And now just knowing that makes me feel even better about it. The other thing that I found interesting was when she asked me if I self-medicated. And full disclosure, I live in Canada, it's 2019, pot is legal here. I have occasionally smoked pot. I also occasionally drink, although neither one is done that often for me. I don't frankly enjoy getting out of my normal headspace very often. I like being in control of my brain, so that's why she asked me that, I said, no, I don't self-medicate. I'm the good kid. I've never really abused any substance. I've always been careful. I've always been clear-headed because I prefer it that way. But then I remembered how much I drank coffee. I love coffee. Again, being in Canada, I have a Tim Hortons double cup near me most of the time, at work, at home, whatever. I am always drinking coffee. And it didn't click for me, but apparently self-medicating, adults with undiagnosed ADHD tend to self-medicate with caffeine-based substances all the time because it helps us focus. A lot of ADHD medication, for people who are on medication, is stimulant-based because it has an effect on the ADHD brain where it helps focus and helps clear the fog. And coffee does that for me abundantly. If I don't start my day with a cup of coffee, I am grumpy and irritable and not able to function, and it's bad. So it didn't click for me, but apparently, yeah, I've always self-medicated with coffee. And it's harmless. I mean, no, I'm not saying anyone should self-medicate. I'm just saying we all develop strategies, especially if you've lived a life not having a diagnosis of something, not realizing that certain things were a struggle. Because of this, everyone will find coping mechanisms and everyone will find ways to overcome their challenges. And I didn't think about it, but I guess coffee has been mine. Again, this whole process has put little idiosyncrasies in mind that I didn't think anything of into the greater focus of, oh, that's because of that. And it fits like a glove, and it's amazing. So, I mean, it's not all roses, though. Nothing is ever all roses. Being neurotypical is not all roses. Being human is not all roses. I find the two of them, like autism and ADHD, in my brain interact in some interesting ways. Like, I find that ADHD and autism balance each other out in my brain, weirdly enough. Like, I am autistic to the core. I can only handle people within limited doses. I struggle with being able to read, like, my friend Nancy will call it little tears, not big tears. I can read overt, blatant emotional expressions on someone's face, yes. I can't read subtlety. If someone looks serious and seems quiet, I'll wonder if they're angry at me. I'll wonder if I did something wrong. I'll feel like, they could just be serious. They could just be not in a good mood, but not, like, angry. But I'll sense something is wrong. I won't know how to read it. So that's true. But on the other hand, being an ADHD-er, I also crave the stimulation of human contact sometimes. So they balance each other out, because in my case anyway, because I find the tendencies of ADHD to want to go out and seek stimulation when it comes to social stuff overcome some of my desire to just not ever be social. And therefore I'm a bubbly, happy person who, so people drain me greatly, but who I still seek them out. Likewise, they complement each other in terms of fixation on special interests and hyperfocus. And honestly, I love the way my brain works, because I wouldn't be able to do the things I do and be the person I am without it. And yeah, both require heavy doses of solitude, which is another area that's nice that they coexist. Because one thing that the documentation that the doctor gave me after I got my diagnosis, which I found interesting, was people with ADHD need to be allowed to have a period of every day set aside where they're allowed to do nothing without feeling guilty about it. And I'd say that's true of people with on the spectrum as well. We need our me time, we need our solitude, we need our ability to focus on ourselves and our needs. I can't be the best person I can be out there. I can't be this activist that I'm being with these videos and that kind of thing without first taking care of myself. That's important. And when I read that, I'm like, oh my God, that's been how I've always been. But it's true. People with ADHD, people with autism, ADHD-ers, autistic people, I have to catch myself too, but I do prefer identity first language. If you're addressing me on the internet, please use identity first language. People on the spectrum, autistic people, ADHD-ers, we need our solitude, we need to focus, to refocus ourselves. And we also sometimes struggle with follow-through on things. Whether you're autistic or ADHD-er or a combination of the two, you're going to struggle with follow-through. You're going to do the best you can. You're always going to intend to be the best person, be the best you can, and do the best you can, and give your all. You might not always stick the landing.
You're gonna do a superhero landing. Wait for it!
Meep meep.
You might forget a few things. You might screw a few things up. You might not focus on something that's super important because you think something else is super important, and then end up giving that a lot of attention, but this one slips. This all can happen, and it's all normal, and it's all natural. It's a part of your brain. Do not worry. But I find the two do complement each other in my brain quite a bit, and they balance each other out as much as they accentuate each other. And again, I would not be me without my ability to hyperfocus, without my social awkwardness, yet bubbly personality, all these things. So I'm grateful for the two of them there. My biggest takeaway from my meeting with the psychiatrist where I got my ADHD diagnosis was how thrilled I was to see the message that I've been perpetuating, being embraced by the mainstream psychiatric community. That is, that these things are not flaws. They have their challenges, yes. Oh my God, I have my challenges because of ADHD and because of autism. Oh my God. But I also have immeasurable gifts because of these things. They make me who I am. They are, if they're properly harnessed, they're personality types in many ways, in addition to having their struggles. If I can harness who I am and what my brain is capable of, if I can harness the way my brain works, instead of trying to force it to do things it's not good at, then it's amazing what you'll do. That's why they're not, like my psychiatrist referred to ADHD as a set of personality traits, and she didn't like the term disorder, she didn't like condition even. I see condition as a bit more neutral, but I get that. But no, she very adamantly said people who've been great leaders throughout human history have had qualities of ADHD. And likewise, people who've been great innovators throughout human history have had qualities of autism. These things are not curses. They can have their challenges, but they're not curses. They're not deficits. They're strengths. They're gifts. Again, they have their challenges, yes. I'm not saying we don't take those seriously. We need to provide support for people who need the support, 100%. But in the process, we can't lose sight of the fact that these things are part of who someone is. They make us who we are, and to cure that would be to do a great disservice. We should embrace our positive differences instead of trying to stamp them out of each other. Because I wouldn't be me without either one of these. And frankly, learning about my place on the spectrum and my place as an ADHD-er has been a breath of fresh air and very enlightening. I'm thrilled to know it. I'm thrilled to know myself better. And I'm of the firm belief that we all need to embrace our differences instead of trying to change each other. Because we are who we are. And at the end of the day, that's how we're going to do great things, right? Live long and prosper, everyone. If you like this video and want to see more content by me at Differently Wired, remember to like, subscribe, and share this video on all social media. Also, you can find a link to my Patreon down below, and I'd really love if you continue to support me. You guys rock, like I said, and I really look forward to making more content for you guys. So until next time, keep it neurodivergent, folks.